Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's so great to be back at in-person conferences, right? Yes? It's been a long time for me. It's been 2 years, so I'm a little bit nervous. So yeah, when I wrote those slides, it took me maybe an hour trying to find a title. So as you can see, it was very fruitful. In the end, I didn't find one. Sorry for that. So, so today I want to talk a little bit about a project I've been working on since the beginning of the year. You might have heard of it, but we'll go over it later, a little bit later. So my name is Guillaume. I'm part of the Vue core team. As it was said, I maintain the Vue DevTools, so you probably are using it. So recently I launched a new version of DevTools. It was almost a complete rewrite, so if you have any issues, please send a bug report, and you can go to the documentation and switch to the previous version, so you're not stuck. All right. So enough about me, and let's go for the talk. So the talk is about writing component stories. So the first question I wanted to answer is why writing stories in the first place? So obviously because you get paid most of the time, but you probably, maybe not, I don't know. So basically what a story is, the story is basically kind of like a test where you take one or a small number of components from your application and you mount them, and they are like in a small space, like a test. But the difference is that compared to a test, the story is meant to be displayed. And this is because we want to have a dictionary or a book with all kind of different stories to be displayed for all the developers, for example, in your company. So it's great for organizing and like showing, for example, new developers arriving on the project, what are the different forms or different models available in the project. So it's good for organizing. It's also great to be able to explain things visually with specific use cases you can show in a story. Oh, my clicker's a little bit slow, sorry. It's also great sometimes to be able to mount a component outside of your application while you're creating it, so that it's in isolation and you're not bothered with like all the other components or stuff in your application. So it makes it easier to focus on a specific component. And also you can sort of test component. So usually we immediately think about a testing use case, which is visual regression testing, because it's really easy to take screenshots of every stories and then compare to the previous version and find visual regressions that way. Cool. My clicker again. So usually we end up writing stories when we have either of those things. So if you are in a big company or maybe not that big, you might have a design system. It's pretty common those days where you define how every component is going to look in your different applications. So it's nice to have a central place where you can showcase your design system to other people like your developers or other stakeholders. And it's also very useful when you have a component library. So if you are like having a lot of buttons or sliders or models, and you want to centralize where they are displayed, for example, for documentation purposes. So we know why we might want to write stories, but what I was focusing on this year and why I started doing what I did is that I found the way we write stories could be better. So my goal was to improve the developer experience when you create stories. So my experience mostly was with a storybook, which is great, which has a lot of features. But I felt the developer experience wasn't like optimal for Vue developers specifically. So I wanted to maybe try a different approach to that. I also wanted to make the stories fit into your project so that they don't like feel out of place on completely different from the rest of your code files. I also wanted to really like use most of the same tools the developer are already using, so that you don't have to learn a new syntax, you don't have to use entirely different tools to write stories. And also I wanted something which has a very nice UI, and also be able easily customizable to match your brand. For example, if you are, for example, Vuetify, you might not want a green interface, but a blue one with your logo and stuff like that. And our last thing, I want it to be fast, right? Because if you have a lot of components and stories and you want to create a new one, you don't want to wait a few minutes for the thing to boot up, right? So that's why I even created Vite in the first place, I think. So I went for this. So I wanted really to be idiomatic for a Vue developer. So if you're a Vue developer and you look at this, it's like pretty straightforward, right? It looks like a Vue component. It has a template, it has a story component, and you can put content in it. And you only have to end the file name with story.vue, for example. And then it turns to a story. Since it's idiomatic Vue, why not using props, right? Use props all the day as a Vue developer, I think. Who doesn't? Yeah, right. So why not configuring this story in a Vue way using props, right? And why not also be able to import your components in a Vue way? So you just put a script setup, import your component, use it in your story, done. It's like a normal Vue component, really. And you can also, for example, put different variants of the same story. So again, I wanted to have a very idiomatic Vue way of doing things. So here is just putting more components inside the story to have different variants. And again, using props, for example, to put a title. So this is what I wanted to have, writing stories. The other thing I wanted is to be using Vite, because Vite is awesome, right? Who thinks Vite is awesome? Yeah. So I really wanted something which deeply integrates with Vite and is based entirely on top of it. And it provides a few benefits, right? Vite has some nice superpowers. So the nice thing about basing this on top of it is that it reuses the same build pipeline, so you don't have a load of other unrelated loaders to configure on top of your project. You already have Vite, right? So why not using it? Yeah, that means less time setting things up and configuring all the loaders. And the nice thing about Vite is fast, right? Vite is fast for French. So I wanted to have this, so that's why I started this project. So you might have heard of it. So I'm very happy to introduce you to Histoire, which is French for story. Thank you. So Histoire is basically a tool that allows you to generate an application showcasing your stories. So you install it, and then it has the development mode, and then it can produce you an application in production you can put in a server, and it would be basically a Vue application. So why should you try Histoire in the first place, right? Because we have like other solutions. So the core values I wanted to have while building it is first to be Vite Native, as I talked about. I also wanted to be dramatic to the developers using it. So currently it only supports Vue, but I'm planning to support other frameworks like Svelte. And I really want to research the way each developer is coding using their framework, and not shove a common like generic standard, right? Which might not fit completely with the way you write code elsewhere in the project. I wanted it to be fast and light so that when you go to the website in production or in development, it loads instantly and everything is fast, right? We like that. I also wanted it to be customizable, right? And of course, I want to have a great user experience. So here's how it works. You basically have two Vite servers running. You have the bottom one, which is basically the job is to scan your project, find the stories, and then execute them on Node side. So it's pretty similar to what Vitest is doing when it loads your tests. So here I'm loading your stories, and then I'm finding if you have a title or if you have different variants. So this happens on Node. And then you have another Vite server, which is a pretty standard Vite development server, which listens on a network port, and then you can go over it and then load the application. And I'm using virtual modules to load everything from the Vite dev server. So basically, the Vite dev server asks for a module which doesn't exist on your disk, and then it will like respond with the collected stories. All right. Here's a little slide because I wanted to brag a little bit about what I really like in the features which are currently in Histoire. So you have dynamic source, which is very interesting. So basically, take your vnodes in runtime, so even in production, and I basically generate back the template you can copy and paste in your project. So it's very interesting. I also have another interesting feature which is called automatic design tokens. And currently, it works with Tailwind. So basically, if you have a Tailwind configuration in your project, it will automatically generate stories with design tokens, such as colors or shadows or text sizes and stuff like that. You can browse directly in Histoire. And then you have a lot of other things, so dark themes, because that's nice, right? Flexible controls is also interesting in the way that you can put, since I'm using Vue in a Vue way, Vue also provides something called slots, right? So you can use the control slots and put everything you want in the controls. So it's very flexible. We'll see that a little bit later. Of course, you can do a little bit of documentation around your components in Markdown. You can also test your responsive queries, because it can embed your story in an iframe, and you can simulate different screen sizes. You also are able to put variants on a grid, which is something new, I think, which I find it very useful. For example, if you have hundreds of different variants of buttons, you might have that, right? It's better to have them on a grid, right, to see everything, every buttons you can have at a glance. I also built a fast search, which indexes everything from story titles to your entire Markdown documentation, and it's entirely in the application, so it's not using an external service. You can also already do some visual regression testing with, I have a simple integration that takes screenshots, and I also have a Percy integration. So if you know Percy to do visual regression testing, you can do that. And obviously, the work is never done, so Histoire might get some new features down the road. So I guess it's time for a demo, right? So here I'm in a Vue project running on Vite. So nothing very strange about it, right? So I wanted it to be very easy to get started. So you just have to install the Histoire package. Please, internet, be good. No, I love PNPM because it didn't download anything. So here we go. We have Histoire in our project, and we can start using it. So usually it's good to have some scripts, right, to make our lives easier. So Histoire has a few. Maybe I should zoom a little bit. Is it better? Cool. Yep. Good point. Thanks. So I'm going to write a few scripts. So for example, story dev. So you can put Histoire dev, story build. So I try to mimic a little bit Vite in that regard. So you have build, and you also have a preview to open an HTTP server on your built version. Oh. Preview, right? Okay. And that's it. We can start using it. So let's create this and run story dev. Finger crossed. Yeah, it started. So I can go over here, and here we go. We have Histoire running. So right now it's pretty empty, right? Because I don't have any story in my application. But we see how we can write some. So let's create a new file. So I go to my component folder, and I'm going to create a very simple story. So it's just like creating a component, but you end your name with story.vue. And inside this component, you can just write idiomatic view. So for example, I can have a story. And I can put some content in my story. And I save. And here we go, we have a story. I click on it, and we have the content of the story. Pretty simple, right? Good. So let's try something a little bit more complex than that. So let's have, for example, a component. I'm going to just put some template first. And then usually what you want is to use the same name and put story to be able to easily tell this is the story about this component. So for example, I can put base button dot story dot view. And then I can put a script setup, import the component. I don't have any IntelliSense, I don't know why, but I go. And then I can create a story about it. So we have another story with our component here, right? So that's this simple. You just use Vue the way you use it everywhere else in your project. And the last thing is that Histoire is going to generate here a little code snippet representing what you can copy and paste in your project to have the same result. So this is actually dynamic. So if I put some variables, for example, text. I don't know why I don't have IntelliSense. Sorry about that. So for example, if I create a ref, and I use it here, text, and I can also have an input to modify it. Oh. So here you can see that the source is actually dynamic. So if I change the text, you can see that it's not fake, right? It's a real dynamic source. So if you change the props and stuff, it's going to reflect on the source panel here, and you can, again, copy it and paste it in your project. Pretty cool, right? So something we can do here is that our input here is not very nice inside the story, right? So why not putting it in the controls panel? So you basically put a template in the controls slot. Oh, sorry. And here we go. Our input is not in the story anymore, it's in the controls here. Nice. And the nice thing is that even if your story is in an iframe, Histoire will automatically synchronize the state with the UI in the controls and the story. And how we can see that is that because I can simulate a device size, and we could put some responsive queries in our CSS here, and it's going to respond to that. So you can test different sizes. Nice. You can also create some presets which will be saved locally on your computer. So for example, test. And then you can switch back to the initial state and then switch back to another state so that you can try different scenarios very quickly. Cool. You can also write some documentation about this base pattern component. So for example, I think it's docs, lang, and markdown, and then base button, for example. So let's put a title. Yeah, we have some documentation. And we can write some code as well. So for example, like color green. And you have code examples here you can put. So actually, I might need a template tag. Right, otherwise it's not valid. Syntax alighting, yeah. you can also expose events. So for example, you could say the button emits an event, a click event, right? So you import HTS event from Histoire client. And then let's go to our button, add a click event, and say HTS event click. And then we can just get the event object to put as a detail. So let's try it. We have events. So very simple, right? You don't have to do a lot of things to do that. My file is like still like less than 30 lines.
Why did it fire 5 times?
Sorry?
Why did it fire 5 times?
Because I clicked 5 times, sorry. I can click more times if you want. If I click only 1 time, you get 1 event. Sorry, I agree it was a little bit confusing, sorry about that. What else you can do? You can change the background color, of course. You can also have a checkerboard if you are a little bit designing. You can change the theme here. You can use black if you want, if you have very specific needs. And everything you see here is fully customizable. So if you have different kind of device sizes or different background colors, you can change them, right? Those are the defaults. So let's do something else. We can, for example, use here, so that our control is not looking very good, so we have a few built-in controls you can use. For example, HST text with a title. So it's going to be written text, for example. Oh, yep, sorry. So here we go. We have a nice-looking control here. Nice, and it's also like responding to the size of Spain, so you don't have to worry about that. What else we can do? We can add props on the component, right? So let's add props. Define props. I'm going to do it the non-JS way for now. So let's say we have a color prop, and it's going to be a string, right? You can see that Histoire automatically detected the prop, so it created a control corresponding to the type. So here it's created a text control. So we can see that if I input something like green, you can see that in the source code here, it's going to add the prop, so you can copy and paste it again. And it's actually kind of like an override. So if you see the little star here, it means Histoire is actually overriding the prop on the component. So you can click on here to remove the override. Cool. So let's say we have another prop, I don't know, a count, and it's type number. We also have different controls. So if it's a number, you have a different control, which is nice. You can slide, change the value, and like play with your story. Is it good? Do you like it? Nice. Yesterday we worked with a team of a certain framework to have a nice integration with it. Are you next? So we ended up with having a working Histoire plugin for Nuxt. So here is a Nuxt free project. So I'm going to kill the other one. Is it killed? Yeah, it's dead. So the only thing you need to do here is to install Histoire and also the Histoire Nuxt plugin. So I'm going to do that. So it's called Histoire plugin Nuxt. All right. And I'm just gonna need to create an Histoire config file to put the plugin into Histoire. So it's very similar to the way you do it in Vite. Sorry, config. So you have full typing, by the way. And you can export default, define config, put some plugins. So I'm gonna get the Nuxt plugin here. That's it. We have Histoire working with Nuxt now. Let's try it. Here we go. It's running, yes. So let's try and do something here. So let's say paste button, story again. I'm gonna just copy and paste. Okay. And for now, we don't have this component yet. So it's gonna display an error. So the nice thing about this is that you have auto import, right? So I can create my component here. I'm gonna copy, paste it, shamelessly copy and paste it here. And I can remove the import here, right? Because we are in Nuxt. And we can see we have a story with our button. Whew. Everything worked. So after 2 years of no conference, I go full life mode. No problem. What else can I show you? In fact, I can show you something I really like. I'm gonna install Tailwind CSS. And I'm gonna create a Tailwind config file. And I'm gonna start Histoire again. Finger crossed. And we can see something strange happened here. We have a new design system group here. And you can click on it. And you have a lot of different stories already generated for you here, because Histoire found you were using Tailwind. So it loaded your Tailwind configuration, and now you can go here and have, for example, all your colors. And you can click here, copy your class, and use it in your project. So currently, those are all the options you have. So you have the text color, the borders colors. You have padding, for example, font sizes, and you can even change the text if you want. To try if which font size is the best for your specific use case. And you can hand with different shadows. So if I switch back to light mode, you can see them. Different border radiuses and stuff like that. And you can even inspect the resolved configuration for Tailwind here. Do you like it? So I plan to add support for more CSS frameworks. right? Because for now it's only Tailwind. So I hope you like what you saw. So I just deployed a new version of the site with all the docs. So previously, Histoire was in early access, and it was kind of closed source. So we're going to do something about that, right? Right, you see the little like lock here. Thank you. So please go to the brand new website about Histoire, so you can go to the documentation, learn a lot about everything Histoire can do. So by the way, it's using the brand new Vite alpha, which just got out yesterday, I think. So it has a nice design to it. So go check it out, histoire.dev. Try it, report bugs. And that's it for me. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guillaume. That was awesome.